Hey everybody, welcome to G&G Live, the live edition of G&G Law. We open our offices virtually, such as it is, to this live webinar format to all of you out there viewing. Today's topic is PLLCs, which is a special type of business structure that we haven't talked about before on G&G Live, but I know a lot of you are going to have questions about it, so let's just dive right in. I'm here with our founder and owner, Michelle Green. She's going to give the spiel, breaking down the basics of what is a PLLC? What does this mean? Why is the IDFPR yelling at me? You're going to find out all of that here in just a few minutes. Now, first, of course, we do have to do our quick little disclaimer. This video is for educational purposes only. What we say isn't tailored to any specific business, and especially as laws change, we can't guarantee the accuracy of this information. And the video does not create an attorney-client relationship between G&G Law and anybody out there watching, and therefore no attorney-client confidentiality. But if you have any specific questions that you'd like an answer to, feel free to reach out. You can do that on our website or shoot us a message here on Facebook, and we'll get back to you to set up a consultation. So without further ado, I'm going to vanish for a few minutes and let Michelle take it over. All right. See you on the other side.
All right. Thanks, Ian. He'll pop in even on this side too, which is great. But thanks, Ian. Thanks for being here, everyone. This is a really important topic because there have been some big changes in the law. So let's dive in. So first question, who does this apply to? Who needs a PLLC? In Illinois, the IDFPR issues licenses to professionals. This is a really, really, really long list. Usually, if you're a professional licensed by the IDFPR, you will know it. But it includes people like therapists, counselors, licensed social workers, psychologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, physicians, people in the medical professions overall, beauty professionals, so salon owners, hairdressers, barbers, cosmetologists, estheticians, nail techs, also includes massage therapists, chiropractors, architects, engineers, pawnbrokers. If you know any pawnbrokers, let them know. But you can find a full list of regulated professions online on the IDFPR website. So here's some examples of those types of professions. And here's why we wanted to do this presentation today, because we really want to take a proactive stance of educating professionals about the change in the law. So when the law first passed, we worked hard to figure out how it was actually going to be implemented. So we called the IDFPR, we called the Secretary of State, and we struggled to find people to talk to. We received helpful answers like, what's a PLLC, when we asked how the changes would affect professionals in Illinois. And I don't mean to disparage the IDFPR Secretary of State's office. It's always complicated to work on implementation once there is a new change in the law. But anyway, what prompted us knowing that we needed to start educating people was we had a new client. We were reviewing the lease for this new client. He was opening a hair salon, and he had already done the formation LLC process through LegalZoom. He'd set up an LLC, as salon owners in the past were allowed to do. And then when he went to set up his entity, register it through the IDFPR, which is required, he got a notice back from the IDFPR saying, you can't register your LLC with the IDFPR as is. You are required to convert it, and we won't register it until you convert it. So that's when he reached out to us, and we were able to help him convert, which is great. But that was sort of our impetus for realizing, okay, now the IDFPR and the Secretary of State understand that there have been changes in the law and they are working to implement them. So we need to make sure that professionals starting a business and then professionals who already have a business know this from the get-go. So they don't have to go through a process of doing one thing and then having to change it up later. So first things first, the change in the law. In August 2018, Illinois updated the Illinois Professional Limited Liability Act and also updated the Illinois Limited Liability Company Act. Previously, so before this change, businesses providing professional services could form their business as either an LLC or as a PLLC. So before this law, PLLC was an option, but it wasn't a requirement the way it is now for many professions. There's other entity possibilities, but that's beyond the scope of this presentation. We're sticking to PLLC and LLC here. Now, after the change in those two statutes, new businesses started by those applicable professions who want to form LLCs and not professional corporations. Those new businesses are required to form PLLCs, and they're not permitted to form LLCs. And also the second change, important change to the law, is businesses formed as LLCs previously, and even after the law, who did it wrong, they must convert to PLLCs. So PLLC versus LLC, and why even form an entity for your business? So it's possible. It's possible to start a therapist business and operate by yourself as a sole proprietor, or other groups, other professionals, licensed therapists as partnership. But there's a good legal reason for setting up an entity in the first place. And the legal reason for setting up a PLLC is the same as setting up an LLC. And it's that they both provide liability protection. And they do this by creating a shield between your personal assets and your business's assets, which means that if somebody were to collect or get a judgment against your business, and not for malpractice, or not for professional malpractice, but get a different sort of judgment against your business, if you have that entity set up, it would be difficult for them to collect assets that you hold personally. So in your personal bank accounts, your personal real property, that type of thing. They'd only easily be able to collect in the business assets. This limits your liability as your business grows, and it's a really great overall umbrella way to get that liability protection. So highly recommended from a legal standpoint to set up an entity for your business to give yourself that protection. How to form a PLLC. So actually, Ian is our office manager, and he takes on a lot of the actual part of the process of forming the PLLC, and that gets boring just listening to me, so he's going to pop in and explain.
Sure. So I'm going to go through two things here. One is the official state process for forming a PLLC, and then one is what we do, so you have a little bit of extra context for that. The state process is seemingly straightforward, but there's a lot of nuance that can get lost, and I'm going to get into that in just a minute. All you need to do to form a PLLC with the state is file your articles of organization. That gives your business information, business name, business address, some basic information like that. And then there's a $150 filing fee. At this moment, it can't be done online. Regular LLCs can be filed online, but PLLCs haven't been integrated into that system yet, so they have to be mailed into the secretary. And there's also special attention that needs to be paid to the purpose section of the PLLC. There are also a few different name requirements, like with a regular LLC, you have to have the letters LLC after your business name, or L period C period. There are a few different variations on that are acceptable. PLLCs have something very similar, where you have to have PLLC, or P.L.L.C., etc. So all you need to do for the state, technically, is mail in the articles of organization. But what that doesn't do is get you set up to actually run your business. What we do, we have a little bit of an intro and an outro process. So first things first, we learn about your business. We learn what you want. your business to look like and how you want it to operate. These details will be very useful later on. That includes, such as your business name, your business address, the things that we need to help you fill out the articles of organization. If you remember that purpose section that I mentioned earlier, that needs a little bit more attention for the PLLCs. Because you're a licensed professional, your purpose section needs to reflect that. And we can help you nail that down, get that wording right so that the state will accept it. And then we mail it in, and then monitor the secretary's records to see when it's approved. And when the secretary does approve your PLLC, they'll mail a copy of your articles of organization back to your registered agent, which is a representative for your business to receive mail, to receive official filings, that kind of stuff. There's more information about that online. So your registered agent will receive the approved articles. After that happens, we'll also send you a little bit of a letter to operate a PLLC in Illinois with some basics on how to get going, some good first steps now that you are officially formed with the state. And then after that, we craft an operating agreement. This is a very important document that outlines your PLLC's financial and functional decisions and which governs its internal operations. So just all of that again, I know that's a lot of words. State process is you fill out the articles of organization, pay the filing fee, mail it in. Our process is we learn about your business, help you with the articles, handle all of that, and then on the other side, we give you a very important document to translate that business information into a functional business that with defined operations, which is very, very helpful.
Yeah. Thanks, Ian. That was great. And how long has it been taking recently for the PLLCs to be formed with the Secretary of State? Hard to say when it's mailed.
Yeah, it varies wildly. The $150 filing fee is for standard filing, and that gets your PLLC reviewed and hopefully approved within 2 weeks. There's also an expedited option, which is an extra $100. And we have a contact in Springfield that can walk that into the Secretary's office so you can get that expedited service without waiting on the postal service and get that. They have like a $100 service fee for that expedited service.
So
it's
we have
really
our
hard
ways.
to tell.
We have our ways to get it in 24 hours if you want to pay a little bit extra.
Yeah.
For an LLC, we can easily tell you 2 weeks, the Secretary of State will have it up. But when you mail on that form, and since this is a newer process, it's harder to give a timeline. It varies.
Yeah, it can take a while. It can take a few weeks. Back when we first started doing it, it also depends on the secretary's workload and how much they have in their office, because they were really backed up.
Is there a pandemic?
Is there a pandemic, for instance? They were really backed up at the beginning of last year by a month or two, but they seem to be moving at a better speed now. It's still a little while, and can't quite say for sure, largely because we're mailing it in and don't have that definite online submission when we know when it gets there, and then we know when it's approved, and that immediate response, because the other part is it can show up in the records, and then the form can take a while to get back to you. You have to get the while to get it there, take the while to get it back.
The great thing about having Ian on your side, he is always checking the Secretary of State website, and he will know whether your PLLC is set up before you get the paperwork.
It's fun. Turned it into a hobby.
Yeah, thank goodness for Ian. Awesome, thanks, Ian. So important tip. One of the things that Ian mentioned in our process for helping our clients set up their PLLCs or convert their PLLCs is we send a letter at the end of the formation process and say, here's some next steps you need to take. Here's what to think about. Just a few tips to think about for taxes. We're not tax attorneys. Go visit a great tax attorney or visit your accountant. But also for PLLCs, and we used to do this for LLCs that were professionals too, because this was a requirement even back then. Licensed professionals have to register their entity with the IDFPR. So in addition to getting your license personally through the IDFPR, once you form your entity before an LLC, now a PLLC, before your PLLC too, but now your PLLC, you have to register your business with the IDFPR, and that's really, really important. What if I'm already set up as an LLC? Well, the statute says that you must convert. We haven't gotten paperwork, or we haven't had clients show us paperwork from the IDFPR in going through the renewal process with the IDFPR registration, where businesses previously registered with the IDFPR that were formed as LLCs got that letter back with the same as newly formed PLLCs or LLCs, requiring them to convert. So if you're already set up as an LLC, we haven't got word from the IDFPR that they're enforcing the conversions yet, but we do anticipate that this will happen soon. So we do recommend, the statute says that you're required to convert as soon as possible, and we do recommend that you convert your LLC to a PLLC as soon as possible. How to convert an LLC. So this is how to convert rather than to form. And Ian's popping back in to say how does this differ from a formation?
It is very, very similar. The main difference is the form that you file and the filing fee for that form. So just a quick recap, to form a PLLC, you file your articles of organization, and there's a $150 filing fee for that for standard processing. For conversions, there's an articles of amendment that you file, and there's a $50 filing fee for that. So it's a little bit cheaper, but the process is the same. Either you can send it in on your own, and there's a little bit of nuance, and you have to also change the purpose in there on the articles of amendment and change your name with those requirements I mentioned earlier to have PLLC instead of LLC. And then our process is also largely the same. We learn the same information about your business. We help you with the forms and getting that purpose crafted right. Once your PLLC conversion is complete with the secretary, then we'll send you another little updated letter about making sure that you're operating kind of correctly with a few different first steps. And then we'll craft an updated operating agreement. Yeah, that's what it's called. We'll craft you an updated operating agreement to reflect the change from LLC to PLLC. So very similar.
Thank you. So PLLC versus LLC, what's the difference anyway? So in a lot of ways, they are very similar. In fact, in most ways, a PLLC is a subset of LLC. So a PLLC is considered a type of LLC. It's still an LLC. The differences are, like Ian mentioned, a PLLC has to have a different purpose listed in the Articles of Organization and the operating agreement. So the purpose needs to specify the professional services that your business will provide. And also, like Ian mentioned, you have to have the letters PLLC instead of LLC in the name, or Professional Limited Liability Company, or P.L.C. But it has to represent that it's a PLLC in the name of your business. If you are converting from an LLC to a PLLC, though, there's no need to worry or freak out that you're going to have a completely different business or a completely different entity. It will still remain the same business. It will still remain the same entity. So you'll have the same tax ID. You can keep your same bank account. For most intents and purposes, it will be considered the same. If you have a tax election, like if you're elected to be taxed as an S Corp, you can keep that tax election. So as long as you're changing the name to adding that P and the PLLC everywhere, which is a process that will happen over time, you're operating the exact same business, and it's still considered an LLC if If you have to fill out a checklist and you have to say the entity type and PLLC is not listed, but LLC is listed, in that situation, you can check off the LLC box. So next question, when should you form a PLLC? So if you're starting a business based on your professional services, forming an entity is one of the very, very first steps that you should take. And the reason why is that after you form your entity, you can get a tax ID for your business through that entity and set up your bank account. So those are some of the very first steps that you want to take to start a business. So you should be doing this as soon as possible. And you also, to get that liability protection, you want to make sure that you're signing those important initial documents and contracts, the lease if you can, your business contracts, sign it through your entity's name to get that liability protection. I should note here too, I said if you're forming a business based on your professional services. So obviously if you're starting a counseling office or a therapy office, do it. But also something that a lot of people don't realize is if you're freelancing, that means you're a business owner. So if you're contracting with others to perform services and you're being paid as a 1099, that means you're a business owner, and we would recommend that you form an entity to get that liability protection. Next question, when should you convert a PLLC? So as I mentioned before, our assumption is that the IDFPR will also start cracking down and require LLCs that were previously registered with the IDFPR to convert to a PLLC. If you have formed an LLC and you haven't registered with the IDFPR yet, then they will send you that notice, most likely, and require you to convert before you can register. So as soon as possible, but especially if you haven't registered with your business with the IDFPR yet, then you should convert as definitely soon. And finally, how much does it cost to either form a PLLC or to convert? Back to Ian.
Back to me. Yeah, so I mentioned the filing fees earlier. That's $150 for the Articles of Organization to form a PLLC. On top of that, we have our fee for the formation process, helping you with the articles and including the operating agreement at the end of the process. That all is $750 plus the $150 filing fee, and that's $900 total to form a PLLC with us. Our fee for the conversion, our fee is the same for helping with the Articles of Amendment. We get you that operating agreement. That's the same $750. The only difference is the filing fee, which is $50 for the conversion for a total of $800. That all is with standard processing. There are expedited options to get your forms reviewed within 24 hours if you decide to opt for those, and it's a little bit more money.
Yeah. And we should note, those are the starting fees for single-member PLLCs for the formation and conversion. If you have a multi-member PLLC, so you're starting your business or you have a business with partners, that operating agreement gets, one, a lot more important because it outlines the voting rights and how those work, and the buy-sell rights is between the partners, the different members in the business. And then also, so it's more important, but it's a little more complex from our end to draft it. So
yeah, our price for the multi-member is $1,750 for that, for multi-member formations and conversions.
Yeah, this is a good time to mention too. This goes into PLLC 102, the advanced class. But there's also rules, and the new changes in the statute also affect who can partner together to form a PLLC. And often you can only form a PLLC. You can only form a PLLC in general with other licensed professionals. And often you can only form a PLLC with professionals who have the same license as you do. But there's complexity there, and let us know if you're interested in that, and we can talk about it in another presentation. So
Yeah.
I'll go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's about all that we have. We do have an excellent question in the chat. We have time for that really quick. This one comes from Linda. Thank you, Linda, for asking. I think we addressed it a little bit, but it'll be good to just do a recap. Besides articles of organization being different for PLLC than LLC, what are the different costs or legal requirements of PLLC over LLC?
Yeah, good question. So the main differences between PLLC and LLC, as you mentioned, the purpose in the articles of organization, so that's the purpose that's listed on the Secretary of State, that's different than an LLC. And instead of having a wide-reaching purpose, the purpose must specify the professional services that your PLLC offers. The other change between a PLLC and LLC is the name. So you have to have the letters PLLC or the word professional limited liability company in the name. And that's an alteration of the requirement they have to have LLC in the name for an LLC. And then the other big difference that I think that a lot of professionals are not aware of is that it's required by statute that professionals who own a PLLC or an LLC operate performing professional services licensed by the IDFPR. After you form that entity with the Secretary of State, you're required to then take an extra step and register that entity with the IDFPR. So the professional needs to go to the IDFPR website and tell them about the entity in addition to the individual license requirements for the IDFPR. So I hope that helps. Thanks for asking, Linda.
Yeah, and if you have any more specific questions, feel free to reach out. And if any of you have any more specific questions, absolutely get in touch. These are very new and they're very confusing, and it's really helpful to have someone by your side as you go through it. You can do that on our website. You can email us at the email you see right there, info@gglawoffices.com. I think that's it.
I think that's it. Yeah. Feel
All right,
free to reach out.
Thank you all for watching. I hope you have a wonderful Friday. Enjoy the spring thaw that we're having and have a great weekend. Talk to you all later.
Thanks, everyone.